It's super cloudy today and I felt a drip of water. They say it was supposed to rain tomorrow anyways. Fortunately, I did all my flying stuff ahead of time, I guess, in case it starts raining. And with that in mind, what did I read today? How about this first one? It's a follow-up story, and I'm sure you guys are interested in it too, where remember last year they had that drone show in Orlando where the drones started to fall out of the sky for whatever reason, and one of them actually hit a boy. Well, I guess the parents are now suing the city for this, and as well a bunch of drone companies, it seems like. So apparently on August 8th, Adriana Edgerton, who's the parent of the child, filed a lawsuit in Orange County, Florida against the city of Orlando, Sky Elements, UVify, UVify Co, and SPH Engineering SIA. So as a quick refresher, this was the holiday drone show event in downtown Orlando on December 21st, 2024. So first, the city of Orlando, where they say the city allegedly failed to properly vet Sky Elements, ensure safe drone operations, or implement adequate crowd safety measures despite knowledge the risk of high volume drone shows in a crowded urban area. And then Sky Elements, the company themselves, it says the company is accused of failing to ensure drone airworthiness, monitor for anomalies, use reliable software, or maintain proper safety protocols, including geofence and emergency kill switches. For the manufacturers of the drone, UVify, they're suing them for negligence and strict liability. They say they allegedly designed, manufactured, and distributed defective drones lacking essential safety features like estimator, redundancies, and emergency termination protocols, rendering them unreasonably dangerous. And same thing for the other company that makes the software, SPH Engineering. They're being sued for negligence and strict liability. It says the Latvian company is accused of providing defective drone control software that failed to include adequate safety features such as reliable geofencing and emergency termination systems, contributing to the drone's malfunction. I guess it's one of those cases too. In these situations, everyone's blaming each other. For example, the company themselves could say, hey, this is all we could do. There's no, I guess, emergency switch or whatever like they want to say. Whereas the other companies could argue, no, our products are perfectly fine. It's the operator that's to blame. So what are they suing for? I guess obviously compensation, but they don't specifically say what amount they should give. It seems like they're just putting out everything. They're generically hoping to get as much as possible, I suppose, because it says here they're seeking for damages for past and future medical expenses, pain and suffering, disability, disfigurement, mental anguish, and other economic and non-economic damages allowed under Florida law. And the lawsuit demands a jury trial and includes claims for costs and interest. And what's kind of interesting actually is, just from what I'm reading here, they don't say specifically what the person's injuries are. They just say severe and permanent injuries to the face and the chest, which actually gets you to think, because I do remember actually when this story first broke out, some people were saying it hit the child in the face and then it fell to the ground. So that wouldn't make sense on how it hit them in the chest unless there were multiple drones. So that's kind of interesting again on how that details actually left out. That did come to my mind where the parents are probably going to try to sue the company and so forth, but I thought that would only be limited to the Sky Elements company, the actual operator. It does seem, when it comes to the drone space anyways, there are a lot of companies that are trying to rush their products up to the market as fast as possible just because they want to try to take advantage of the rapid growth, I guess you could say, first mover advantage type of thing. I mean, even for things like people selling courses, actually, there were so many complaints even initially where people were buying all these courses. It had no relevance to things like the tests and so forth. And the companies would just be like, shrug shoulders. Oh, well, like that's all they knew in terms of what to teach. So it makes you wonder, in this industry in particular, is safety, productivity, people actually benefiting skill-wise a priority, or is it just about people making money in a lot of cases? But either way, this will be really fascinating to see what happens and whether or not it puts more pressure on companies to be sure that they have a lot of safety measures and stuff in place. Because with that thought, actually, there are a lot of places that get into things like drone training per se, because they can make a lot of money even if you don't actually teach people how to fly, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. But this was kind of interesting, as apparently there was a company in Canada that actually acquired a flight school from the US, This one says, Zenatech signs offer to acquire a flight school enabling complex BVLOS missions and potential drone-as-a-service U.S. government and military contracts. It says, Zenatech, a business technology solution provider specializing in AI drones as a service, enterprise SaaS, and quantum computing solutions, today announced that it has signed an offer to acquire a Florida-based FAA-certified flight school that trains professional pilots for FAA Part 61 certification to be qualified as an airplane pilot, and also for complex BVLOS drone pilot operations. And here's the part that should get you to think actually. It says, today, the most common commercial drone pilot credential is Part 107, like a drone, quote, driver's license, but without a flight test, is obtained with only a written test and a few weeks of study. However, there are waivered or special flights that require additional pilot qualifications, such as when operating in restricted airspace, when coordination with air traffic control is required. Doesn't that make people wonder, especially if you're not in the space, you get a license without having like a flight test and so forth? Okay, is this really going to make people safe? I mean, I know here anyways, the exam and stuff that you take is so irrelevant to a person flying a drone. A way to think about it, and it's kind of true, imagine it kind of like there's a system where you have to get licensed to ride a skateboard or a bicycle. You'll have this person here charge you whatever it is, $300, where they have absolutely no experience riding a bicycle or a skateboard. They might have like a driver's license because they drive a car, but they are going to be the ones to determine whether or not you could use a skateboard or a bicycle, even though they can't use it themselves. Does that make sense to you? Unfortunately, that's how it currently is in this crazy world, huh? And with that thought, actually, how about this one? This goes back to that story in Nova Scotia. Remember how they're banning people from going into the woods, hiking and all that, where you could get a $25,000 fine, and there are people challenging it? Well, apparently the premier there, his name is Tim Houston, he made a comment where he actually contradicted himself, just like the other one in New Brunswick, where they kind of admit, okay, we're not banning people from hiking there, for example, because we think they are going to be the ones causing the wildfire, which is what a lot of people said on why it's justified. He kind of admitted it was because of the same reason where, well, you could get hurt, for example, and if there's a wildfire, there's no emergency workers, so you should stay out. So you can see his actual speech here first in regards to that.
I get that people want to go for a hike or want to go for a walk in the woods with their dog, but how would you like to be stuck in the woods while there's a fire burning around you? I don't think anybody would want that either. So be smart, be human, don't look for loopholes. An out of control forest fire is a terrifying thing. So treat this situation with the seriousness that it deserves. We are, certainly as a government.
I mean, that was pretty quick in terms of the narrative falling apart. They can't seem to make up their minds, in my opinion, on why they want to ban people. They're just trying to justify it in every way possible. And at the same time, he made a comment in terms of those people who are purposely, let's just say, breaking the law because they want to challenge it. His response was kind of interesting because he was kind of laughing when he said that, on how he wanted people to get fined and he hopes that they will have to pay up eventually. So you can see this here.
Since last week's announcement on restrictions, 12 fines have been issued. It's certainly my hope that every single one of those is fully prosecuted and collected.
So think about that line again, especially the fact that he kind of laughed at it, saying, it's certainly my hope that every single one of those is fully prosecuted and collected. Again, talking about the fines that people receive for hiking in the woods per se. Doesn't that make you think, especially with their answer now in terms of why they're banning people and that type of response? I mean, logically, I think most people would look at that and say, okay, we know it's kind of crazy, but maybe they don't have any other way to word it, or they could get back to the drawing table and say, okay, we need to reword this in a way that actually matches what they're trying to do if it's actually to prevent wildfires. But unfortunately, they're just contradicting themselves over and over again, correct? There's like no way out. Unfortunately, what it makes me think of is it's kind of like what people say about liars, where the hardest thing for them is trying to remember what they say, because they'll come up with a new story every single time, and then eventually it just becomes so contradicting that you have to wonder, okay, yeah, you're not being honest, so what's the real deal? That's what I would wonder anyways. Like, what would you think in this situation, especially with this guy's reaction like that? For myself anyways, it doesn't matter what the topic is. When it comes to stuff like this, I usually try to look for things like pattern recognition, because in every case, there's a similar situation in terms of what they do and how they do it. So even when it comes to things like drones and so forth, that's why I mentioned before, you have to look closely from day one who is actually, let's just say, against a certain direction, who actually just tried to sell you stuff, jump in afterwards, or just completely change their opinions. Kind of like this actually, I guess, because the narrative is falling apart. To me, it's not rocket science, it's just common sense, but apparently common sense isn't so common, I guess. All right, see you guys later.